Fabulous. All right. So everybody, hello and welcome and thank you for joining me. If you don't know me, I'm Janice Benstock and I'm like a real estate nerd. So I have a school and a brokerage. I'm also involved at PAR and GPAR, but I am not speaking here as a director at PAR. I'm not speaking from a position of GPAR or any of their views or NAR. I'm an ambassador for the C2EX program. This is 100% me and my personal and professional opinion that is talking. So I just want to make that clear. The other thing is, as a reminder, there is no price fixing, there is no collusion, there is no set or standard commission. There is no such thing as discount, because discount would imply that there's a standard and we're discounting from the standard. So today what we are going to talk about is how to deal with what's going on right now in response to the NAR settlement. We are not going to talk about the details and the legalities of the settlement because I'm not a lawyer, and I started to read the 108-page settlement and then I said, why the F am I wasting my time? I'm not reading this because it's not even approved yet. Nothing has officially changed yet. And I took my own advice and I said, instead of me reacting to what's going on and giving it more attention, I'm going to instead focus on me and my value to my clients. And that's pretty much what I want to talk about today. So what I want to start off this conversation with is what you give your attention to expands. And this is true with everything in your life. You notice it when you're out buying a new car. If you decide that you're looking at SUVs, you're going to start noticing SUVs everywhere. The exact kind that you're looking at, the color, they're going to appear everywhere. And that's because of two things. It's because your reticular activation system, which is the part of your brain that notices things when you're paying attention to them. And it's also because of law of attraction. And whether you believe in law of attraction or not, it's just like believing or not believing in gravity. It's real, whether you believe in it or not. If you drop something, it's going to fall and hit the ground. You don't have to understand how gravity works. I don't understand how gravity works, but we all know that if we drink too many drinks, gravity is going to take hold and our asses are going to hit the ground or off the bar stool, right? We know that. And it's the same thing with law of attraction. If you start thinking negative things, you're going to attract more negative things and you're going to notice more negative things. So whether you believe in law of attraction or not, no matter how you look at it, this is what's going to happen in your world. Now, I am not saying that any of us created what is going on because of our thoughts. It happens. Things happen. They happen in the world for reasons that I don't understand why they happen. But what I do know about what's going on with this settlement is that there are a lot of hype in the news, a lot of scare, a lot of people trying to sell things, people trying to take advantage of fear, people trying to take advantage when you hear the saying so many times when there's crisis. Oh, you can't see my sign. Oh, there's my sign. Can you see it? It's back, or is it backwards? It says we should all be millionaires. And my other sign in the other room says, be led by something greater than money and the money will follow. So we're going to talk about both of those two things today. They're like my two, I should put them like right here and here. So people are trying to capitalize on the fear, either by coming up with something new that's going to disrupt the marketplace or by scaring us into doing something differently. But what I want everybody to remember right now, if you boil down this whole settlement and you boil down everything that's been going on, and we could spend hours and days breaking down the politics behind it, who's really behind it. I personally think it's way bigger than all of us combined. I think it's some kind of thing that almost borders on sounding like a conspiracy theory. And the reason why I'm telling you that is because there's a lot of infighting and a lot of discussion and a back and forth. And I understand agents are scared, but there's a lot of this conversation going on in Facebook groups that I see. And in reality, it's not serving anyone. Because if I'm right, which I think I am, this is so huge that there's no way to stop it. It is going to take on a life of its own. But it is a huge lesson for us because life takes on a life of its own. People have health issues. People have personal losses. People have natural disasters. It is not about controlling our environment. It is about how we react to it. And that's what this conversation is about today. So I'm not going to go into the whole conjecture about what's going on at NAR, because the reality is that when I start going down that route, this is why I stop myself from reading the entire settlement, because then I get into that fray and I lose focus on what my real job is. And my real job is to serve my clients, to be led by something greater than money, and let the money follow. Hold on, my phone is not off, and it should be. That's not good. Is to be led by something greater than money, and the money will follow. And when I focus on those things, I'm going to be able to adapt and to bend no matter what the circumstances are. And so are all of you. And that's what I talk about when I talk about getting into the right mindset. There are a lot of people out there that talk about mindset, and their take on mindset is the very masculine approach. And when I say masculine, I don't mean man and woman. When I say masculine and feminine energy, I mean the masculine energy is the very much doing energy, like masculine energy. And when people talk about mindset and they talk about crush it, dominate, do it, get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and pound the pavement and make the calls and do it. That's a masculine energy. And a feminine energy is more of a receiving energy. And we all have both. And there's no right and there's no wrong. And men and women and non-binary, everybody has a mixture of these two energies. It's just the way that we're naming our energies. And so I'm much more right now focused on the feminine energy, the receiving energy, because there's only so much that we can do, especially if my theory is right. And it's not about me being right, it's about living under this paradigm or this belief or this umbrella that this lawsuit is far bigger than any of us imagine. Some people say BlackRock is behind it. Some people say the DOJ. I personally think it's CoStar. It could be a number of huge players, but it is so huge, and assume that it is so huge because this is not about a bunch of sellers deciding that they wanted to sue, because sellers don't even really understand. This is about something far bigger than us. And if we let them distract us into going into the fray and thinking that we can control what is going on, we're losing control of our entire existence, our entire spirit, our entire life, our entire vibration. And that is not what this is about. What this is about is, let's look at where we are in this very moment and focus on two things. One, how to operate best under the current paradigm. And two, how to always know that our mindset is number one in every situation. Because if your mindset is correct, and this is what I mean by feminine energy versus masculine. When I say your mindset, I'm not talking about the people that are like, crush it, get up every day and dominate. And don't even get me started about why the word dominate is even associated with real estate agents. I saw a post yesterday about an agent who switched brokerages and was talking about how now they're going to dominate and crush. I don't know what that means. That's not ever been in my vocabulary. It's never been on my to-do list. It's not something that I'll ever understand, because that's not what this is about. What this is about serving clients and making money. When I say serve clients, it doesn't mean we're doing it for free. It doesn't mean that we don't care about ourselves and our families and our passions and our life and our world and our hobbies. It doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. It means that when we are led by something greater than money, the money will follow, and we will never do wrong when we're led by something greater than money. And everybody has their own definition of what something greater than money is. So when we focus on mindset, which is really at the base of what all this is, when your mindset is right, when you truly believe that what you focus on expands, what you put your attention on expands, when you believe in your soul that you're going to be okay because all of the rest of this is noise and bullshit, then it doesn't matter what happens, you're going to be fine. And that's where we are right now, because as of now, the proposed settlement really makes two changes. And one of them, is anyone here not from Pennsylvania? I think mostly everyone's here from not Pennsylvania. I'm going to assume everyone is. If anyone's not Pennsylvania, holler. Okay, because I'm just going to say the way it is, and I'm assuming anybody, if I put the replay out there, I'm always talking about Pennsylvania if I don't specify state. So if you're in another state, always check with your broker or your real estate commission, because I only know PA and sort of Jersey. I'm a Jersey broker, but I don't know Jersey the way I know PA. So in Pennsylvania, really only one of these things is going to affect us. So there are two things that are going to happen if this settlement gets approved. One, buyer agent compensation will not appear on the MLS anymore. That's huge, but it's totally doable. We'll figure it out. New York doesn't, Manhattan doesn't have an MLS. They have figured it out and they're doing just fine. We will figure it out. The second thing it says is that we have to have a buyer agency agreement, buyer agency contract with our buyers. And this is why I said in Pennsylvania, we already have that. We've had that since 1998 or 1999. It's law and it must be done. And if you haven't been doing it before, you're going to start doing it now because you have to do it. As of now, there is nothing that says sellers cannot pay a buyer agent commission. This is what the news is latching onto so they can sell their advertising and get their clicks, their clickbait. They're latching on to, and I'm saying this because I've seen it in the New York Times, they're latching on to the 6% commission is dead. There has never been a 6% commission. There has never been a fixed commission. There has never been a standard commission. There's always been and will continue to be commissions by negotiation. So where does this leave us? What do we really have to focus on? We have to focus on three things. We have to focus on getting our buyer agency contract signed, and I'm going to pull one up in a minute and go over it with you. And we're going to talk about what the contract says. And full disclosure, these contracts might change. PAR, or if you haven't, go right to the source. So if you're not, is anybody here not a member of NAR, not a realtor? Is anyone not? I'm assuming everybody is. If you are a member, make sure you go to PAR and sign up for Just Listed. It's their blog that comes out Monday through Friday. Sometimes it's about law stuff like this. Sometimes it's about where millennials are looking to buy and what their favorite paint color is. So read the ones that you're interested in. You'll get them Monday through Friday. You'll also make sure that you check all the emails that you get. They sent out one last week and one this week. And Hank Lerner, who's the head counsel at PAR, he did a really great video about breaking it down and where we are now, and putting the voice of reason out there, because there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of scare tactics going on. And also there are videos and things coming out from NAR. So those are the sources that you should pay attention to, and you can look anywhere else you want, but just the minute that you start feeling that level of toxicity, that means shut it down, because that's no good for you or for anyone. Because I did that. I went on Facebook. I go on Facebook a lot. My life is, sad to say, I run my life through Facebook. And so I spend a lot of time scrolling, and I find myself, like, especially in big Facebook groups like Lab Code Agents, there'll be a post there and then everyone just jumps in and starts talking. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. But when I start reading that and after a couple of minutes, I feel toxic or start to feel scared, I shut it down, because it's not serving me and it's not serving my clients. And we can all think, I had a hellish week with a settlement that still didn't happen for 3 days. And the buyer was getting on a plane and leaving, and we had to close, and everybody knew. And I literally was like on my bike, running back and forth, doing all these things to the property. We've all had stories like that, haven't we? Where we've done stuff over, above, and beyond for our clients. Every single one of us, we could sit down for a whole entire day and never run out of stories. So those are the things that I need you to think about and go back to when you start seeing all the hype and all the noise and all the scare tactics out there. Because the reality is, there will be changes. We don't know what they are, and I'm not going to do conjecture about what they are because it's a waste of time. But there will be changes, and there always will be changes. But there are people who don't need us, and that's okay. But there are people who abso-freaking-lutely need us. And those are the people that we have to stay in the game for. Those are the people that we have to focus on. Because if we go trying to run around now after the low-hanging fruit, and I'll get into it in a few minutes, but like the whole Zillow model where they're selling buyer leads, right? They're selling buyer leads to agents, and the agents are buying these leads because they know, or in the past, I should say, they knew that if they got this buyer, They were just going to show them a property and they were going to be guaranteed a buyer agency commission. That model is going to change. It's going to be a huge change, because now if you buy a lead off of Zillow and you want to show them property and there is no commission, and remember, this is no commission option is not part of the settlement. A lot of the MLSs, including Bright, changed compensation. They made zero a number. That happened already. That has not because of this lawsuit, this proposed settlement. That was already the case. So because of all of this, there will be sellers that offer zero. And we're going to talk about how to talk to our sellers. But what I want you to understand is that at the crux of it, the base of it is you, your value, and the relationship you have to your client. Because if you think that you're going to be able to go after every single buyer and get them, and I saw someone on a Facebook group that said they took their first listing since all of this happened, where the seller chose to not offer a buyer agency commission, and that they used 16 different scripts. And it's very difficult for me to say the word script without the vomit rising to the back of my throat, because I don't believe in scripts. I believe in speaking to humans and being problem solvers and helping them. Sales is service. And how can I help someone if I'm reading a script to them? A script is about me and trying to get that person to do what I want them to do. That is not sales. That is not problem solving. That is not service. Service is, what do you need? And let me see how I can freaking help you. That is service. That is sales. And if there's someone who has a need that I cannot or will not help, they're not a client that I'm meant to work with. And I'm going to respectfully, with all the love in the world, thank you, but no thank you, and move on to the next. And that's one of the skills and the boundaries that you might have to sharpen up in the coming days. And that's really important. So we're going to get into that as well. So if there are no questions, I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about buyers and buyer. Oh, I just didn't finish. I started and I went off on a little bit of a tangent. The whole buyer agency thing, the whole like Zillow, and Zillow is just the example. It could be anywhere of the buying leads thing. That I think is really going to dry up, like I said, because there's some sellers that are offering zero compensation. And so there are people freaking out about that. And then there's talk about how many million agents are going to leave the business. And there's all this talk. We don't know what's going to happen. All you need to be concerned about is you. That's all you need to be concerned about, is you and what your value is and how your business is going to work. And so if you are currently getting your buyers from that type of situation, then you're going to just need to tweak and rethink your business a little bit. And that's one of the things that you can jump in and ask the question, and there's no shame in it. And that's why I said I'm recording it, but I may or may not, put it out there. If someone comes in and they say something in this room and it's too vulnerable and we don't want it out in the public, we won't put it out there. So the first thing I want to talk about is the buyer agency contract. So this, oh wait, I have the listing contract up first. Let's talk about the listing contract first, because it's up here first. So the way it stands right now, and again, remember, these contracts may change. PAR is talking about possibly, changing the forms. And I'm on the standard forms feedback panel, but I'm not on the actual standard forms committee, although I beg to be, and this would have been the perfect year to be on it. But I am in the feedback panel. So I will probably not be called to actually sit in the room and talk about rewriting the contracts, but I will be at the business meeting in June. And there will be things, I'm sure, that come up. It's very timely because these changes are supposed to take place in July. So if you have any comments or concerns, you can send them to me in an email and I can bring them to PAR in June. You're also all welcome as members to come to our business meetings, and you probably should, especially now with all these changes going on. They're in Harrisburg. I forget the dates. It's sometime in June. Jess, if you know them, you can throw them in the chat. If not, we could just Google them. But if no one's ever been to the business meetings and you're interested, we could talk about that at the end. But so for now, I want to go over the listing contract as it stands now, because this is what we're working under now. And again, things might be changing at the speed of light. So always stay in tune, and I'll probably do more of these as time goes on if people are interested. Okay, so let's talk about the commissions and see how I put little X's there. You can imaginary number, put whatever number in there that you want to, because these numbers are negotiable between you and your client. But what I want to point out, first of all, we are safe. And then one thing about the lawsuit is the settlement, I mean, protected us all because we were all at risk for copycat lawsuits and for all kinds of liability. And now it is pretty much, from what I've heard, blanket covered us so that we are not in any way, shape, or form at risk for any of these copycat lawsuits. And that is a huge, huge win for us because personally, as a broker, a small broker who doesn't have a huge cushion like maybe NAR and Keller Williams do, I was sweating it for a little while because we could have been named in any one of these lawsuits by anyone. And now it seems that we're pretty safe. So our listing contract has said, for as long as I can remember, no association of realtors has set or recommended the broker's fee. I'm right here. Broker and seller have negotiated the fee that seller will pay broker. That's always been the case. It always will be the case. Here's where you put your fee. Now, your broker, if you're a broker, you can set your own fees. I set my own fees for my company, and I'm allowed to do that because all of these contracts are in my name. So when my agents are out there writing up listing contracts, they're my contracts. So I can tell the agent who is an agent for me, my contracts say this percent or this amount, and this is it, or we're not taking the listing. But what I cannot do is have my agent say to a seller, this is the going rate, or this is what people charge, or this is how much it costs, or this is what you have to pay, because that's price fixing, that's collusion. So when my agent sits down or I sit down with somebody, I say, this is what I charge. Now, currently what we're saying, and we all know this, is I say I charge X. And then from X, I give half of X or whatever I want to the buyer's agent if a buyer brings someone. That conversation is how we've been doing it all of these years. But even though our contracts are written properly, we're going to need to be very careful about the way we say this to people now. In the olden days, I would say, I charge this and I'm going to give this to a buyer. I was telling them, this is what I charge and this is what I'm giving to the buyer. Even though our contracts are still written that way, my guess might be that these commissions are decoupled, meaning instead of saying you're paying me X and I'm paying this portion to the buyer, it might say, and I don't know this for sure, we'll see what happens, but it might say, this is what I charge as a listing agent. Now let's talk about what we think that you should pay as to a buyer's agent. So instead of putting this number here and half of it down there, we would just put half up here and half down there. You following me without me saying the numbers? And it doesn't have to be half and half. It could be 1 and 5, it could be 2 and 3, it could be 3 and 3, it could be 4 and 6, it could be whatever they want. But my guess is that the contracts might decouple that. What's important to know for now, because I don't know what's going to happen with the contracts, but what's important to know for now is that the conversation you have with your seller had better sound like you're decoupling the commissions. Because the basis of the lawsuit was that sellers were forced to pay a buyer agency commission because NAR colluded, and a lot of it is the MLS. I personally think that the main purpose of this entire lawsuit was to dismantle our MLS. I think it's our MLS that's under attack, not us. I don't think it's our commissions that are under attack. I think it's our MLS. And so this is why I think the settlement involved not putting commissions in the MLS, because that takes a huge, huge strength away from the MLS. And now it gives it to other people. So be careful in understanding that the purpose of this, I believe, is to decouple commissions. So when you have the conversation with your seller, you can say to them, I charge this, and think about whatever you would put in this here, what your portion of that would be as the listing agent. That's the number you tell the seller that you want to charge. And then you have the conversation with them about paying a buyer's agent. And the way that I have the conversation is I say to them, and now we talk about if you should pay a buyer's agent or not. It's totally your choice. You've seen a lot of stuff in the news maybe about what's going on with commissions, but let's have a real conversation because a lot of it is hype. I strongly suggest that you offer compensation to the buyer's agent, but you don't have to. But the reason why I suggest that you offer compensation to the buyer's agent is because buyer's agents don't work for free. And in the past, buyer's agents have been putting into their contracts that they charge their client something. And if the seller doesn't offer that commission, the buyer's going to have to pay out of pocket. And now, in response to this lawsuit and this proposed settlement, almost every single buyer's agent is going to be signing those contracts, which means almost every single buyer that looks at your property, if you don't offer a commission, they're going to have to pay their agent. I don't know how much, that's between them and their agent, but they're going to have to pay something. And without boring you and nerding out on numbers, although I'm totally happy to show you with some math, the buyer probably doesn't have that money in their pocket to pay their agent's commission. And the real problem, Mr. Seller, is that buyers are not allowed currently, this might change, but currently, because of mortgage guidelines, they are not allowed to borrow those closing costs. So here's the deal. If a buyer wants to see your house and you don't offer buyer agency commission, they're going to have two choices. They're going to either not buy your house, or they're going to ask you to pay their buyer agent a commission. And we can always go back later and look at an offer and negotiate and say, yeah, in this case, I'm willing to pay a buyer agent commission. The seller is willing to pay a buyer agent commission. But I have a feeling a lot of those buyers are not even going to look at your house. And that might be true because they know they can't afford to. So instead, if you offer a buyer agency commission, we can pretty much bake that into the price because that's how it's always been done anyway. Now, you don't have to do that, but that is my advice to you. And the other thing that I want to tell you people, not Mr. Seller, I'm back in the room with you, is that you don't have to take the listing if the seller doesn't want to pay commission. And not because we're forcing them to pay and not because we're price fixing or colluding, but because that listing contract that you sign, who are the parties to that listing contract? You and the seller, or technically your broker and the seller. And the reality is that's an employment contract. It's a bilateral promise. I am promising to market and procure a ready, willing, and able buyer, do the best I can. And the seller is promising that he's going to convey title, that he's going to let his property be shown and marketed and all that stuff. Well, if I'm going to take a listing and I'm not getting paid, for the most part, you can ask for money up front, and that's another model that we can talk about because there's so many different ways that you can get a commission. But for the most part, I'm not getting paid unless it closes. So I don't want to take a listing that I don't think is going to close. Forget about commission. Go back to the olden days. An overpriced house, one that was just totally undesirable, one that maybe had title issues. If you don't think the house is going to sell, why would you take the listing? Well, if the seller doesn't want to offer a commission to the buyer's agent and you feel like that's going to make it too difficult for you to sell, don't take the listing. And you say to the seller, I appreciate it, but I don't think that I'm the right person for this because I don't think I'm going to be able to sell this easily without you offering a buyer agency commission. And I would love to help you, but I don't feel like I have the time to gamble on listing this property. The property's great. You're great. It's a great area. If you change your mind and you decide that you want to talk about offering a buyer agency commission, that would change things. And I think I would be able to sell it. Otherwise, I wish you the best of luck. That is not collusion. That is not price fixing. That is you as a business owner deciding that this listing is not worth your time. And until you're able to set those boundaries for yourself, and it's not just about listing agent commissions, it's about anything in life, it's mindset. You need to set those boundaries for yourself because one of my favorite sayings is, and those of you who have been in my classroom before, you've heard me say it, is every time you choose to do something, it also means you're choosing to not do everything else. So you spend and you fight and you take this listing where you don't think you're going to be able to sell it, or it's going to be extremely difficult for you to sell because of one thing or another, including no buyer agency commission. And now what happens? Now you're spending your time doing this. And while you're focused on doing this, guess what's happening? You're like the dude walking down the street, looking at Tinder on his iPhone, and he misses the love of his life because he's looking down at his phone. That's who you are when you do something that goes against your gut, against your kishkas, and you do something that you know is not the right thing because you have fear of scarcity and fear of lack. That's what that is. That's mindset. And when you bow and you cave to something that you feel is not right for you because you're afraid there's nothing else waiting, that's the minute that you're the dude looking at Tinder on his iPhone and misses love of your life going right by. And you have to take a leap of faith. You have to take a leap of faith in energy, in the universe, in yourself, in God, in source, whatever you call it. And you have to take that leap of faith that when you say no to this because it doesn't feel right, it means something better is coming along. And that will never fail you. Your intuition will never fail you. The next thing, we're going to go right into buyer agency commission compensation and buyer agency contracts. And again, remember, this is how they are now. And we're going to save time for questions at the end, but I just want to get through all this contract stuff. So the first thing is we currently have 2 buyer agency contracts. We have this one, which is the exclusive buyer agency contract. It doesn't say exclusive in the title, but it is. Sorry, it says it in the language. And then we have the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. I, in the past, have gone back and forth between the two on different situations, but now I almost exclusively default to this one, and I'll explain why. The 3 main differences between this and the non-exclusive. This one has a term right here, a start date and an end date. And the instructor and me, just to let you know, there is no legal limit to how long the term could be. Our listing contracts are limited to 1 year by law. So it's best practice straight from Hank Lerner's mouth that we limit these to a year, but it is not the law. You can put whatever you want in there. But again, my suggestion is do not go longer than a year. So this exclusive buyer agency has a term, whereas the non-exclusive buyer agency contract says, any property that I show you, I'm representing you and I earn a commission. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this one is exclusive. It says for any property that the buyer purchases, whether shown by me, by another broker, by themselves, by Craigslist, by whoever, like the exclusive right to sell, the buyer owes me a commission. Whereas the non-exclusive again says any property that I show you and you buy as a result of me, you owe me a commission. The third thing, and this is the big thing right now with what's going on, is the broker's fee. In the non-exclusive buyer agency contract, it says, and again, this is what I think is going to probably be changing by July, is the non-exclusive buyer agency contract says it's custom that I receive my commission from the seller. And if you go in and you go without me, it could compromise my ability to earn a commission, but it doesn't say anything about the buyer paying me. It says, I can't charge you a commission unless we enter into a written agreement, but there's no space in the non-exclusive buyer agency contract to say what the buyer is going to pay me in the case that the seller doesn't pay me. That's why I use the exclusive all the time now. Something's got to change. And I have my suggestions for standard forms, but who knows what's going to happen. We'll see what happens. So here's how it stands right now. Again, we have the disclaimer, the antitrust price fixing disclaimer that it's by negotiation. That's in every contract. Here we go. Broker's fee paid by buyer. This is saying the buyer is paying me X amount. If a seller is represented by a broker, I'm charging X amount of the purchase price or flat fee, because we can charge either or. There's no standard. Whichever is greater, and this might be where I charge, let me make this bigger. I see people squinting a little. So whichever is greater, and this might be where if my brokerage charges a flat fee, a conveyancing fee, a transaction fee, whatever flat fee it is, we're going to put in here. Then we have B, which says with a seller who is not represented by a broker, the fee is blank. In my world, these numbers are different because if you're not represented by a seller and I'm representing the buyer, I'm doing more work, right? I don't represent the seller as a fiduciary, but I have to help the seller. Like, you need a payoff, and this is on your title report. Like, we end up doing more work. So a lot of times I will put into my contracts, This number is even higher than that number because I'm doing more work if they're not represented. But you can do whatever you want, whichever is greater and blank. So it's the same format. It's just represented by a broker or not represented by a broker. The seller is. Broker's fee in a lease transaction, same thing. You put whatever your fee is in a lease transaction. And remember, this number is not the total commission. This number is what you're charging your buyer, right? It's what you expect to get as a buyer's agent. So now we go into 3, and this is where I think the language is most definitely going to change. It is a broker's policy. I'm right here on line 3. It's not highlighting for some reason. It is the broker's policy to accept compensation offered by the listing broker. Well, guess what the listing broker can now put? 0. It's been that way for a while, and I believe it's probably going to become more common. It is broker's policy to accept compensation offered by the listing broker. If the amount received from the listing broker is less than the amounts in paragraph 2B1 and 2B2, which is this whole section right here, then the buyer will pay broker the difference unless seller agrees to pay the difference as a term of the agreement of sale. Boom. That's what's in here right now that everybody has to pay attention to. This is what you need to explain to your buyer. And this is why it is the law that we have a buyer agency contract. It has been that way for 25 years if you're representing a buyer. Nothing has changed. However, a lot of people skated by and didn't do it because we could rely on the clear cooperation compensation offered in the MLS to the point where if the seller, if the listing broker didn't sign the CBC, the cooperating broker compensation letter, a screenshot of the MLS would work, because realtor to realtor in arbitration, when you're fighting someone over a commission, if you went to arbitration, a snapshot of the MLS where they had that offer of compensation was enough. That's how seriously we took it. And now it's changing. So we just have to know how to do business with it changing. We need to sit down to have a conversation with our buyers and explain to them this section and say, look, it says right here, it's broker's policy to accept compensation. A lot of agents are still offering it. And now because of all the news and the hype, some of them think that they don't have to. We'll deal with each situation when we get there. But it's possible that if the agent is not, if the seller is not offering me my X amount of commission that I'm charging you, you're going to have to come up with it. Now, here's where we have to be discerning again. And there are all different shades of this and opinions, but these are the things we need to think about when we're choosing to work or not work with buyers. 1, can they afford us? Because if they can't afford us, unfortunately, we can't work with them. Now, I know there are social ramifications. I know that this is really hurting the lower income buyers. I know it's hurting the VA buyers. I already know all that. That's not what this talk is about today. What this talk about is how we as professionals are going to respond to the market, not how we're going to change it, not how we're going to fight it. That's another conversation. So we can choose to not work with the buyer. We can choose to lower our normal rate for the buyer if that's something that we choose to do. And I'm not going to tell you not to do that, because there are certain times you just want to freaking help people and you're willing to take a discount on what your set commission is, your own commission is, and that's between you and you, as long as your broker approves it. The other thing we could do is we could try and negotiate with the seller. You can put the offer in, the buyer can put the offer in now and say, X, I'm offering this price and a seller assist, and the seller should pay my buyer's agent this much of a commission. And the seller can say yes or no. And then the buyer can move on. So you don't have to just say no to a listing because there's no commission offered or not enough commission. You can negotiate that. The other thing, and this is what I like to do, find the money somehow, figure it the F out. Like, I love to get creative and solve problems. I'm one that never says die. So, you know, it's not going to work for everybody, but there's grant programs out there. There's like the K-Fit program. There's all kinds of programs out there. So that's always another option, is to get creative and come up with some money so that you can help them. So now that we went over the buyer agency compensation and we went over the buyer, the exclusive buyer agency contract, you can also use that with your seller, can't you? You're getting ready to take a listing and you can say to your seller, let me show you the buyer agency contract that I use with all of my buyers. and you show them a copy and you say, when I sign up a buyer, I'm putting in there that this is what I charge, this is what they're paying me, and if the seller doesn't pay it, they are. And then you explain to them what it's going to look like if that buyer doesn't have the money to purchase the property. Say that buyer is working with me because I turned them into a buyer. They were just this innocent person sitting at the bar across from me. And when we started talking, I explained to them how they could become a buyer, and I'm the one that caused them to become a buyer. So they're not going to work without me. They can't work without me. There are some people out there who can click on Zillow or click on Redfin and they can buy something without me, but a lot of these people can't. And so, Mr. Seller, you are going to come across a lot of buyers that cannot work without their agents. There are some that can. There are absolutely some that can, but you are limiting your buyer pool by not offering a buyer agency commission. Furthermore, what I used to tell my sellers is that even more important than price, and I might get rotten tomatoes thrown at my face for saying this, but I would tell my sellers, and I still believe it, more important than price, assuming price is in the range, right? It's not like $10 million on a one bedroom shack. More important than price is how accessible your property is to show. Because your price could be totally right. And in a crazy seller's market, that goes out the window because people buy things sight unseen at $50,000 over asking. But in a normal market, in a regular market, showing your property is more important than price, because any astute buyer or astute buyer's agent, if they know their property is overpriced, they're going to show it anyway. And then they're going to make an offer that makes sense, and they'll sit back and they'll wait for the seller to come to their senses, and they'll end up getting the property. But you all know when it's next to impossible to show a property because you have to like fax the thing in and then drive to South Philly to show something Northern Liberties to pick up the keys and give the buyer's last name and the blood type of your firstborn, like, and wait 48 and a half hours in a 15-minute window. You're not doing it, right? But if it's vacant on lockbox or zero notice or confirms go and show, you're showing it. So I explain that to my sellers. I've been explaining that to them for years. Now, something else I have to explain to them is how important it is, if they want to make their property saleable, to pay that commission to the buyer's agent, to offer that commission to the buyer's agent. And if it comes down to showing them a sample seller net sheet, because that's what it's all about. And this is why this whole thing makes me crazy, is because we're all spending so much time and energy, and the people that are doing this don't even understand how it really works, because at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter, because the price is going to reflect whether or not there's a commission. I know that, and you all know that, but they don't understand that. And we have to explain that to them. And that's how I'm approaching this now. And any other noise that's going on there about what's going on out in the world, I'm doing my absolute best to shut out, because then it's fear and it scares us away. We have to focus on what our value is, what our value proposition is. And that's where the energy should be. We should know how to have these basic conversations with our clients. And then all the rest of the time should be focused on knowing our value. What is your value? I know what my value is. My value is not sleek marketing. It is not like the best reels and the best. I suck at that. I have no desire. It's a miracle that I even washed my shower and did my hair today for you people. Like, I'm dressed in sweatpants all the time. I am who I am. So I don't pretend to be something that I'm not. What I am is, I know numbers inside out and backwards. I know those contracts word for word in my freaking sleep. I have emotional intelligence that I can help negotiate contracts with people and see both sides of the situation. I listen to people. I'm a problem solver. I know my value proposition. Do you know yours? Because yours is different than mine, and it should be, because there are people who are going to work with me and they would never want to work with Tina. They'd be like, I'm Janice. And then the vice versa. People that are going to work with Tina that would never be my people. So we have to focus on what our value proposition is. And the noise in the media is distracting us. So I promise to leave time for Q&A. Thank you. Is my volume still low? Why attack the MLS? That's a good question. Is my volume still low? The reason why I believe that there's an attack on the MLS is because people want a piece of the pie. The MLS, if you think about it, and this is my opinion, I don't have any data to back it up. It's just my opinion. is that back in the day, before there was syndication to third-party sites such as Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com and those types of sites, we had an exclusive on our data. We were the only ones that had it. And data is where all the value is, right? People pay so much money for data. We had all of it. And then NAR went into syndication agreements and they started syndicating. Now, we can all be pissed at NAR. I was for years. Oh, and the one thing I want to say first is when we talk about NAR in the third person, we are NAR. We are NAR, right? So we talk about NAR as if there's some separate entity from us. We might not be in leadership. We not be the ones in the room that are making the sausage, but we are NAR. Go to your GPAR meetings or Tri-County, wherever you are. Go to your PAR business meetings. Go get involved at NAR and have your voice heard, because NAR is not perfect in any way, shape, or form. And maybe there will be a new association that comes along and takes over, and I don't want to say takes over, but gives us an option. But the reality is we need an association, whether it's NAR or something else or a new revamped NAR, we need an association. Because if our industry can be attacked this way with such a powerful organization, how do you think it's going to be if each one of us is individual? Do you have money to be fighting lawsuits? Because I don't. I absolutely freaking don't. Not only that, but I don't have the energy or the bandwidth. I would crumble. I get sued, my E&O insurance, I get sued like once every 5 years. And every time it happens, I'm like, oh, I go into like, start sucking my thumb and like drinking vodka through a straw because I'm like, I can't deal. It's too traumatic, right? You want to get on with your life. You don't want to be dealing with that. So get involved and stop looking at them as a third person, as a separate entity, because we are NAR. It's not just about dues. Like, this is our organization. So jump in and make it better instead of pulling back. That's the first thing. Second thing is back to the MLS. There is such money to be made in stealing the MLS. Imagine, and we pay our dues to MLS, but MLS is not for profit. Bright is like a cooperative kind of thing. Now, it takes money to run it, right? They have a big budget. There's money to run it, but it's not a for-profit organization. Do you know how much our dues would be and how much it would cost to put every listing up and do whatever, and there would be advertising all over the place if we were forced to use a commercial site? Do you have any idea how much somebody would love to get their hands on our MLS and turn it into a money-making situation? I can only imagine that that people are having over that bag of money. So that's what I think. And I personally think it's somebody huge like CoStar who's trying to take it over with homes.com and all that. That's me, but we could do that all day and it's not going to change anything. All I want you to know about that is imagine that it is that big, whether it's that someone I saw on Facebook was saying it's BlackRock, whatever it is, imagine that it's so huge and that and they're up there like this as a puppet, right? A puppeteer. And what are we? We're all on these little strings running around talking in lab code agents and all these things about, oh my God, and this, and they should know, and I have to pay this. Nobody fucking cares. Nobody cares. What we have to focus on is, what is your value proposition? How are you going to get that to your clients so that they know what your value is and you know what your value is? Because if you don't know what your value is, you're not going to be able to tell your clients. You're going to be shaking in your boots and you're going to be like, well, I charge this because I'm worth it, because somebody in Lab Code Agent said that we should get paid. Because shut up. No one cares. We are not in a time and materials based industry. We do not get paid for how many hours we work. Because there's the one deal that this week, if I tell you the hours and the copious amounts of alcohol I had to consume to get through this, and it's not closing until April 1st at 7 a.m. when I'm jumping on a plane at noon that day to go away for 12 days to Europe, that's how close we are. If I tell you how many hours I spent, you would look at that commission and you would be like, you could have worked at Wawa. And then there's the times when we close something and it's like, we show the person one property, we write up the contract in our sleep, we send it over, it's accepted, we do 5 hours worth of work total, including settlement, and we get the hugest check we ever saw. So do we get paid time and materials? Are we paid because of how many hours it takes? Is it anyone's goddamn business how long it took us to do what we do? Because when someone says to me, oh, that took you no time at all, I'm like, bitch, it took me 27 years because that's how long I've been in this industry. That's how long I talk about this stuff every day. I teach it. I walk the walk. I talk the talk. My whole entire Facebook feed is full of real estate information. I don't get to play with Kim Kardashian's ass and dancing kitties. That's not my jam. I live and breathe real estate, and I'm sure most of the people in this room are at the top of the game, at the top of the profession, and that is what people need to know. And you need to know that. When my pre-licensure students come in after the first hour of the first day, I say to them, you know more than most civilians out there. These idiots that are reading the New York Times and talking about how commissions are dead and blah, 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 they don't know anything about our business. They know nothing about our business. The ones that want to go click on Zillow and buy now and go with a Redfin agent, no shade against Redfin, sorry, I didn't mean that. Go with an agent who gets paid by the hour to go show them property and isn't incentivized. People that want to do that, let them go do that. That is clearing the path for us to work with the clients who really need us. And when we set our prices according to what we are worth, when we believe in our value and we are able to put our value out to those other people, wouldn't you rather get paid more per client and work with fewer clients than do a volume business and get paid shit? Because I would. I want to set my prices to the point where I weed out the tire kickers, because I don't want to work with people who are not easy to work with. I want to work with the people who need me, where I have value. I don't want to be a door opener. Here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom. After all this time, I would stick a fork in my forehead out of boredom. I couldn't do it. I want the left of centers. I want the underdogs. I want the people who never thought they could own a home. I want the people who never thought they could be an investor. I want the people who are in trouble and I need to help them figure out how to sell their property and how to get whole again. That's what I want to do. You figure out what you want to do and run with it. And put your blinders on and stay in your lane and do what you do best, because nobody else can do what you do. You are unique, you are special, you are different, you have value, and you have to know that every single day. And when you are led by delivering that value, all the other noise and all the other bullshit falls by the wayside. And then you can do your job. You can be led by something greater than money, and the money will follow. Did anyone have a question? I thought I saw a hand going up somewhere. No? Okay, let me check the chat again. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Yasmin. Okay, does anybody have any questions they want to open up? And I hope this was helpful. And yes, you were so right all the way. No one knows how much we really do and how hard we work. That is true. But here's what I want to say about that. I see so often, and I saw it a while back, this copy and paste thing that was going around in the real estate world on social media, where it was like realtors, and this was before all the lawsuit settlement stuff, about how, you know, people complain that we made too much money. And then it had the whole breakdown. I'm sure you all saw it, the whole breakdown, and maybe some of you even shared it too. So forgive me, but it's trash. And let me tell you why. It was the breakdown that says, you know, this portion has to go to my broker, and then I have to pay taxes, and then Johnny's soccer and Sally's ballet lessons and blah, blah, blah. And I have a mortgage. Nobody freaking cares. Nobody cares. So when we talk about how much we do for our money, it's in this room. It's not what I say out there to clients. Because when we say how much work we do and how valued we are, I'm saying this in this room so that you know that you're valued, not so that they know you're valued, because they don't care how good you are. What do they care about? They care about the WIFM. What's in it for me? The WIIFM. So your value is for you so that you can go out there and explain to them how your expertise are going to help them. And 16 scripts, back to the beginning of this conversation, 16 scripts is not the way for you to explain value to someone, because how do you know what they need? Wolf of Wall Street, buy this pen. Everyone saw that movie? I'm like, buy this pen. And then you get up there and you're trying to give the best sales pitch for buy this pen. And you're like, oh, it has the sleekest black ink with the sharpest blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, someone in the audience is like, That would be really great to pick my nose with. How is you telling someone about the color ink going to make them want to buy this pen if you don't even know what they need, right? Maybe they need a blue pen because it has to be wet signatures for a POA. Maybe they need, right? Maybe they need to scratch their ass. Maybe they need to untangle their necklace. Who's ever untangled their necklace with a pen? So here's my point, is that scripts suck. They're obnoxious and insulting because you read a script to someone, at someone, and it's all, oh, me, I'm going to say this to you. But what about the human on the other end of the script? They're a person with needs. Your value is that you know how to fix it. You have a tool belt filled with all these tools. And all you need to do, and you know this, is open your mouth and ask them, and then shut up and listen. And then when you start hearing what their problem is, you're going to now have more questions for them, right? If you read them a script, where do they fall in? You're leading them down a path of questions. I'm going to tell you a story. And if I know it's 12, so if you have to go, there's no harm, no foul. I'm not going to be insulted. A couple of months ago, I brought my buyer, and this buyer is actually one of my agents, but she has me represent her because she's kind of part-time. And so she was looking at a property that she was going to be using for a very specific purpose. And she needed it wheelchair accessible. And this is a seller's market. So the listing agent on the day it opened basically like had an all-day open house. So when we got there, I had my client with me and the listing agent started walking us through, which I'm not a fan of to begin with. Ask me if you want me to walk you through, you want me to have you walk me through and up. But anyway, maybe the seller wanted her to do that. None of my business. But the point is, we're walking through, and I swear to you, she's like, this is the kitchen. We know. These are the quartz countertop. We know. Then she starts telling us about stuff that we don't know, which makes sense. Like these are the heated floors. Now, my client wants to buy this for someone in a wheelchair. Do you think heated floors mean anything to someone in a wheelchair? No, they absolutely don't. The point is that agent walked around for 20 minutes, wasting our time, telling us about things that didn't matter to the client because she lives under a paradigm of blather information. I'm a billboard. I am announcing. I am highlighting the property. Our job is not to sell houses. We have never, ever had the job of selling houses. Houses sell themselves. We are in the job of people and relationships and problem solving. And houses are just the mechanism that we use to transact. It has never been about houses. And yes, you have to know the house because people are going to ask questions. And yes, we have to know real estate law because we do contracts. But what we have to know always, the skill that's going to carry us through, because no matter how this business changes, or some of us might even decide one day for any reason, including this lawsuit, that we want to do something else. And hopefully we all have side hustles or we all have other interests. Hopefully we're not all going to do this forever because we have other varied interests. The skill that will translate, that will carry through your entire life, no matter what business you're in, no matter what relationship you're in, are people skills. That is the skill that's going to make your life worth living, not crushing it and dominating in a real estate market, because who fucking cares? Do I care how many billions of dollars you sold? I give zero shit. I give zero shits. What I care about is that you live a meaningful life, you help other people, you are honest, you have integrity, and you're joyful. That's what I care about. So why are we spending time chasing after clients that are never going to work with us? Why are we spending our time, wasting our time, getting into the fray in fucking Facebook groups about who's doing what? Who cares? This is where we are now. Figure it out. And remember that our goal, our number one priority is always, always, always to serve the client. It is always to serve the client. And if we keep them in the forefront of our mind, we're not going to be running around scared. We're not going to be running around like worried about, oh my God, I'm not going to pay my commission. Guess what? We'll figure it out. If they do away with buyer agency commission, guess what? We'll figure it out. So what, we're going to spend time trying to figure out what they're going to do? They are somewhere that is so big and so outside of us. We're just puppets running around. So guess what? Stay away from all the noise, Focus on what you do. And if you are feeling any fear or anxiety, what you need to focus on is your internal, is your value proposition, who you are. And if you don't know your value proposition, I'm more than happy to do that work with you. That is my life's work, is helping people figure out their value and their mindset. Right, Sally? If she's still here, she might have had to go. So that's what I do. That's what I love to do. And that's what I'm here for. Let me check the chat again. I didn't want to go over and I did. Anyone? Oh, Sally is here. So you can vouch for that, right?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
I just have one question because I never heard anybody ask this question yet. So since it's not going to be an MLS, the commission, how do we find it? For
So we
example, if I
haven't,
have, mhm.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Like for example, I might have 5 showings of, so how would I know what's the commission would be in advance? I would like to know that in advance, even though I'm
So
still show them,
yeah,
but
absolutely. And we haven't figured that out yet. So one of the things that I've seen in the proposed settlement is that brokerages will be able to promote their own commissions on their own website. So for big brokerages, that's going to be easy peasy. So I'll use Keller Williams just because they're huge. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just using them as a big brokerage. So Keller Williams would be able to, according to what I read, they would be able to put the buyer agency compensation for all of their listings on their website. So now you go on to MLS and you pull a listing and it's a Keller Williams. And again, I don't know that they're going to do this. It's an example. You go on their website, and if you look in the MLS, you can click through. It's like 2 or 3 clicks, and you can get through to the brokerage's website. So then you would be able to see the commission on there. It's a couple of extra clicks, and it's a pain in the ass, but it's a pain in the ass for a reason. It's a pain in the ass is because somebody wants to take away the MLS, in my opinion. So that's one way that we would be able to do it. I saw someone put a meme online, and I think this is probably not going to be allowed, but they're like, I'll just put it in showing time. I don't think we're going to be allowed because I think that's like a direct relation to MLS, like because it's connected, you know what I mean? Although Zillow owns showing time, just be aware. So it could be that. It could be the matter that you're going to have to say, call me or text me or set up some automation. Like there might be, and I don't know how it's going to play out, what we're going to be allowed to do and what we're not going to be allowed to do. But there's technology out there that if we're allowed, it could be click on this link and it's going to take you to a property page on my brokerage website, and there I'll list the commission. So it might be able to be one click away. I don't know. But what I do know is, guess what? We're going to figure it out. This just happened the 15th. What's today, the 22nd? A week ago today. And look at already how many people are talking about this stuff. It's not going to take effect if it gets approved until July. We'll figure it out by then. And look at the speed of, and the speed of information that we share with each other, social media, text, brokerages, all that kind of stuff. We will definitely figure it out. Let me just see if there's any other questions while I'm reading through the chat. Okay, lovers talk. I will have buyers have to enter into and sign a buyer agency contract in order to actually see a property when all this is approved. Mark, so here's what's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to. The new proposed settlement says that we're going to have to enter into a buyer agency contract, which we already do. I don't know if that means that we're going to have to, I don't know how they're going to police that. It might just be an after the fact thing if there's like a procuring cause case. But what I do know is, like, for example, down the shore in South Jersey Shore MLS, which I'm a member of, when I list a property down there, I have to submit my listing contract to the MLS. That's a requirement of South Jersey Shore. So it's possible that we're going to have to submit something. I don't know, but you, regardless of that, you should be doing it anyway, because forget about commissions. Let's just talk about the RELRA. Right? I just did, and if you guys are GPAR members and haven't taken your continuing ed, I'm doing it for GPAR. It's free for members. Again, I think May 2nd, just log on to GPAR and you can sign up. When we look at agency under the RELRA, it says that you have to have express agency. Express meaning in words, it can't be implied. So there's all kinds of legal fiduciary messes if you don't sign one. So even if you're going to sign the non-exclusive buyer agency contract, you're fulfilling the requirements of agency under the RELRA. But in order to protect your commission and now comply with this NAR proposed settlement, you should sign the exclusive buyer agency contract, unless we add something into the non-exclusive agency contract that also talks about commission, because the non-exclusive agency contract has been a really good tool for me and a lot of us who work with investors, because we know our investors don't want to be exclusive with us. They're out working with 10 agents, whoever brings them the deal, but we still have to sign an agency contract with them. So non-exclusive has always been my go-to with investors, but now it doesn't protect me, because if an investor wants me to show a property to them and it's a zero commission, I'm screwed and they're screwed. So my guess is that we're going to have some sort of compensation paragraph in the non-exclusive buyer agency contract, or we're going to have one, this is my proposal, we're going to have one agency contract and it's going to say exclusive or non-exclusive. And then it's going to say, this is the commission. That's my guess, but we'll see what happens. Is there anywhere I can go to get a printout of what the changes to show my sellers as opposed to what they are reading online or in the news? I want to show them accurate information at listing appointments. That's a really great question. And what I would probably do is, I mean, there's the settlement, but you're not going to read the whole settlement. What I would probably do is get something from a respected source like NAR, and there's a whole section on NAR and PAR with all of this information, and just it breaks down to what the two big changes are. And those are the two big changes. Buyer agency contract must be signed, which it always has been in Pennsylvania for at least the last 25 years, and commission will not show up on the MLS. As of now, that's it. That's all there is. And so all of this about commissions changing and 6% and buyer, it's all noise meant to distract us from doing what we do. I'm going to tell you right now, if each single one of us goes inside and thinks for 1 minute about a human being that we helped, that would bring tears to our eyes, either buy or sell a property, we have stories that could fill volumes of books. That is what we need to focus on, because that is what we do. Sure, I want to sell the $3 million pied-a-terre to a Playboy from Manhattan and just make an easy commission. Absolutely. But that's not what drives me to do my business every day. Definitely share the recording. Okay. All right, I'll share it. So true, love this. Okay, fabulous. Thank you guys for so much for everything. If you have any other questions, you know how to reach me, and the consensus is I'm going to share the recording. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.